Dipshit Debbie, DNC chair, dopes Florida with opiates despite the heroin epidemic, but doesn't endorse drug to soothe suffering cancer victims. Debbie Wasserman Schultz again makes the news because of this debate she had with her opponent, challenging her from the left, a Berniecrat named Tim Canova. During a debate that they had, it appears that Debbie Wasserman decided to kind of stick with her position as far as medical marijuana goes. In 2014, she was opposed to Florida's constitutional amendment that was supported by the majority of voters, but failed by 2 points to hit the 60% passage rate. Which is because it was going to be a constitutional amendment, which it is this time too. Does she favor the 2016 Amendment 2 proposition that's going to be on the ballot? Wasserman Schultz reiterated that she is continuing to take a look at a similar amendment on the ballot this year. I don't think she's for it. She's for the same thing that the Hillary people in Maryland are for, and for everybody else that's waiting in line for Hillary to come along and say, okay, it's time to hand marijuana off to all my friends. All you small people that were growing, bye-bye, you're out of the game. All right, so we're gonna go with this Observer.com piece by Michael Sanato. Here I am murdering people's names again. Sorry, maybe sometime in the future when I'm actually established at this, and I actually might meet some of these people, because it seems like all the people that write these articles are pro-marijuana legalization, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I just look at only those articles. I look at the other ones and I'm like, Reefer Madness is too apparent, and with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that's all she goes on. Reefer Madness, Reefer Madness, Reefer Madness. Let's check into it. Okay, medical marijuana has bipartisan support in Florida for the past several years. In 2014, 58% Floridians voted in favor of it, just shy of 6% needed to pass. Same year, Rick Scott, the governor of Florida, he signed this Compassionate Medical Cannabis Act, which was very limited. It was for cancer patients, Lou Gehrig's disease, or epilepsy. Unfortunately, nobody's ever really been able to come up with actual medicine for these things, and it's too expensive to do anything else, and basically people are just trying to grow medical marijuana underground and see if they can get away with it, as far as from what I understand on the ground. The bill is co-sponsored by the Democrats and Republicans, and many cities and counties across the state have taken measures to decriminalize the drug. In November of 2016, medical marijuana will appear on Florida's voters' ballots once again, and a new medical marijuana bill is headed to Florida State Senate this week after being approved in the Rules Committee. Despite bipartisan support across the state, Florida may not join the 23 other states, 25 now, and Washington, D.C. that have already legalized medical marijuana, due in large part due to the efforts of DNC chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Now, this is an article from March, so let's rewind a little bit and correct a couple things. The thing that they were talking about with the new medical marijuana bill, it didn't happen. When the Senate came back together and the Rules Committee, the Rules Committee handed it off to them, they sat and argued about finer points, and then there was people trying to get their agendas in, and there was people fighting it because they knew it was bullshit. And in the end, they parted ways when they came back into recess with nothing getting done, so that's dead. The other point I might correct is that, the 23 states. It's 25 now. And the other two was legislative action. I believe it was Pennsylvania and Maryland. I think. Well, anyway, we'll see. I'm doing stories on all these states and seeing how shady their laws are, the ones that were passed through the legislation branches rather than balloted by the people. So anyway, 2015 political reporter Mark Caputo wrote an article revealing Ms. Wasserman corresponding with an Orlando lawyer and medical marijuana proponent named John Morgan. Now, John Morgan alleges Miss Wasserman Schultz offered to change her stance on medical marijuana if Mr. Morgan retracted negative statements he made to the media about Miss Schultz. No, Mr. Morgan told Politico, she is a bully. I beat bullies up for a living. You might remember that this guy Morgan is the one that funded and put together these initiatives both in 2014 and again in 2016. Anyway, Mr. Morgan, who once denounced Miss Wasserman Schultz, helped bankroll the failed 2014 medical marijuana initiative, which Miss Wasserman Schultz criticized, making her an enemy of the bill's proponents, who are joining the many voices campaigning against her re-election to Congress. Ms. Schultz's criticism of the bill are linked to significant campaign contributions she receives from the alcohol industry. You might have heard about WikiLeaks and how they leaked some stuff about how the alcohol lobby is responsible for all these politicians going out there and saying all these bad things about medical marijuana and marijuana. I will do a story about that, mark my words. It's an important story. It needs to be covered more. Jimmy Dore talks about it. I don't know if he did a whole story about it. Yeah, I think he did a whole story about it. Jimmy Dore, a few other people in the liberal media overall. When I say liberal media, I do mean the alternative media, like what you're watching right now. You know, like you're not going to hear anybody on the news give you this kind of commentary about this, or even read this article. This article is supposed to have never been heard of. So let's move on. The alcohol industry. In the past year, this is back in, like I said, March, she received $15,000 from Southern Wine and Spirits and $10,000 from the National Beer Wholesalers Association. Throughout her political career, she has received thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from these organizations, including Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America, which you might know of is a huge lobby. They're one of the biggest lobbyists besides the Restaurant Association. Anyway, let's get out of that for a minute. I just don't think we should legalize more mind-altering substances if we want to make it less likely that people travel down the path using drugs. So here we go with her in an interview with the New York Times Magazine, where she basically invokes some ancient crazy propaganda, Reefer Madness, that, you know, the watered down 1960s Reefer Madness, where marijuana is the gateway to other drugs. I mean, before they had to resort to that, they flat out told you that marijuana was more dangerous than heroin. Marijuana was the most dangerous drug there was. That was what Nixon said even in the 70s, but still, if you look back in the 60s propaganda, the gateway theory was being pushed pretty hard from the mid to late 60s, and it became a staple for right-wing talking points against marijuana throughout the decades after that. It's been disproven time and time again. Anything can be a gateway drug. Mother's milk is a gateway drug. Come on. Gateway drug for real. What about alcohol? I'm sure most people have tried alcohol before they even know what marijuana is. Maybe in my world it was way more prevalent than marijuana. So reiterating the gateway drug talking points, blah blah blah. Quote, we have had a resurgence of drug use instead of a decline. There is a huge heroin epidemic, she said. So not only has the gateway drug myth have long been debunked, 1999 a report commissioned by Congress found that there is no conclusive evidence that the drug effects of marijuana are causally linked to subsequent abuse of other illicit drugs. And she went ahead and bridged the gateway gap between marijuana and heroin. I mean, I've seen her get straight up smoked on this point, where people are using headlines like, you know, Debbie Wasserman says that marijuana leads to heroin, point blank. Like recreational marijuana, it's going to cause so much more heroin use. And it kind of sounds like that's what she was saying, so I'm not going to like discount some of those pundits or whatever you want to call them, commentators. So anyway, we get over that. And in the same interview, she was pressed further on the issue with questions as to why prescribing opiates wasn't illegal in Florida, as they are often attributed to heroin addiction. So right back in your face. Oh, marijuana leads to heroin addiction? How come you guys have pill mills? How come you guys are putting so many people on opiates that there's a massive, massive heroin problem in Florida? The unpopular Mrs. Schultz will most likely be a staunch opponent of medical marijuana initiatives, blah, blah, blah. Her answer to that, by the way, she basically dismissed the question and basically kind of snubbed her way out of it, and then was like, there's a difference between opiates and marijuana, you know. What are you trying to say then? Are you trying to say that we took it wrong when you basically linked marijuana to the increase in heroin use? You're acting like just because someone smokes a joint, they might someday lead up to heroin. Well, what about all the opiates you prescribe for people? Including the ones that, like Oxycontin, where since the people that run that cartel, the family that owns the Oxycontin, the pharmaceutical giant that has been making their money their whole lives just poisoning people and killing people, they get a pass. And in fact, they get legislation in your state and federally to where they can prescribe this death to kids as young as 11 years old now. It's sad to see. It's sad to witness what's going on. And to see Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the debate with Tim Canova, once again, one of the key areas of disagreement, and this is from the Miami Herald, was medical marijuana, which Canova adamantly supports. He supports recreational marijuana. He supports the decriminalization of all drugs, as far as I know. Last time I heard. In 2014, Wasserman Schultz opposed Florida's constitutional amendment that was supported by the majority of voters, but failed by 2 points to hit the 60 passage rate. Wasserman Schultz reiterated that she is continuing to look at a similar amendment on the ballot this year. If you live in Florida and you have the opportunity to vote for Tim Canova, please vote for Tim Canova. Please get Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her corrupt game of acting like she's a liberal, acting like she's for all these progressive things. She is in the bag for Big Pharma. She's in the bag for everybody that wants to make marijuana stay illegal. She's in the bag for anybody that wants to make medical marijuana stay illegal. Don't count on her if you want to farm hemp anytime soon. Just get rid of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. In fact, she's the one that ruined it for Bernie Sanders. You know, I mean, she used to work for Clinton, and then it's time to get elected Clinton. So what'd she do? She started working for the DNC as the head of the DNC. She took Tim Kaine's place. Oh, guess what? Let's give him the vice president seat. And then later on, he can appoint somebody, and later on, somebody else can scratch somebody else's back. And meanwhile, nothing's getting done, man. We got all these people that are going to jail for trying to grow medical marijuana. And in Florida, we have people trying to pass legitimate medical marijuana laws. We have billionaires and millionaires lining up against it, putting out basically dusty old 1930s to 1960s Reefer Madness propaganda to fight this sensible bill that the people of Florida really want and need. And they've been begging for it for a while, and you gave them a program and it was bullshit, and they really want their medicine. Just give them their medicine. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, shame on you. You're an evil, evil, evil person. Tim Canova, beat her.